Peter, what actually is liquefaction?
Well, liquefaction is a word that's bandied around quite loosely after the earthquakes. Liquefaction is not the sand that appears at the surface we often see in the suburbs and on the roads. Liquefaction is actually a process. It's a process by which essentially a solid sediment, like a sand, turns itself into a liquid. The way that happens is that the sediments that actually liquefy, they have to have a few characteristics. The first is they have to be relatively loose, that is, they're not really compact. They have to be a particular grain size, sandy, fine sandy. Sandy is the best. And thirdly, they have to be water saturated. And during an earthquake, what happens is the earthquake waves permeate into the sediment, and particularly into the pore water. Remember, these things are saturated. The pressure of the water increases to the point where the grains aren't any longer in contact with each other. The sediment then collapses, and in the process it becomes a liquid. And with the high pressure water, it starts to flow. And it will flow anywhere that the surface allows it to flow. So if you have a very firm crust, it might not get to the surface. But if you have a thin, weak crust, it'll break through and it'll start flowing across the surface of the land. In the process, it forms a whole lot of features, but we've talked about things like, we've seen examples of sand blows. These are volcano-like features, where the sand comes up with a central crater and then flows out to form a symmetrical feature. And sometimes these sand blows coalesce to form long linear ridges of sand, and typically in areas close to rivers where the ground moves over the liquefied layer and starts to crack, that's when we get these long sand blow, long ridge features.
So Peter, what are you actually doing out here digging holes at Pines Beach?
We're out here at Pines Beach to dig trenches to see what effect liquefaction has on the soil profiles.
So tell us about the project.
The site here is our third site in a project that's been running for about 2 years now. It's funded from the Natural Hazards Research Platform, and it involves Lincoln University, and I'm from Lincoln University, and a PhD student, Monica Bucci, from Italy. She came especially to work on liquefaction following the September and February earthquakes, and also colleagues at GNS Science, Pilar Villamor, based in Avalon, Lower Hutt. The project is aimed at understanding where best to go in a landscape to look at evidence of past liquefaction. We're using the Canterbury earthquakes as a modern analogue for the effects of liquefaction, and where we find liquefaction related to those earthquakes, we've targeted for study to see if we can identify what particular sediments and what parts of the landscape are most prone to liquefaction. So if we want to go looking for evidence of past liquefaction, where should we go? We're using lessons from the modern earthquakes, or the recent earthquakes, to help us with that.
So what have you actually discovered and learned here?
So far in the project, we've spent time digging trenches in river country near Lincoln, Green Park in particular, and the liquefaction features there were quite understandable. We've made good progress in understanding what we should be looking for in the soil profile when liquefaction has occurred, and we thought we'd go further and start looking at the sand country. We're close to the coast here. We've got a big dune out to the east of us, and where we're standing in this reserve is also sand beneath our feet, and we want to see, well, what happens during liquefaction when we're dealing with sand dunes, and what kind of signature does it leave in the soil profile. And what we've learnt, well, we've ended up being confused. We've seen some features we haven't understood, and we've had a number of opinions from different experts on it, and everyone has been perplexed. But just recently we had a fortuitous experience of another earthquake, which has helped illuminate what's going on here.